Fang, good to have you with us. I mean, is this a reasonable rally? I mean, how much more upside is there to it?
So it's funny, about 4 years ago, I wrote a piece on why Bitcoin can reach 100,000. And I think in 2025, there may be a chance that we actually see that prediction coming across. But putting that aside, I do think that Bitcoin's value has always been holding true. The reason we are seeing it going up is exactly a reflection of markets' reaction to Trump administration, or the anticipation of Trump administration being pro crypto, pro Bitcoin, and also pro economy.
Right. So they say huge things are coming. What exactly are we looking out for? What would be a game changer in terms of regulation, easing of regulation? What would prompt that rally to go higher?
I think there are actually two sides. One is really market expectation about how the Trump administration's policy will affect the macro economy in general, general policies around tax cutting, general policies around healthcare spending, around their external policy, and the impact on labor market. That's one side. I think generally right now, at least, the market is very optimistic about what the new administration will do and how it will actually help support the market. I think the other side is about what the market expecting about the administration's policy toward crypto, right? In general, like clearer policy, clearer regulation, whether there will be actually a federal regulator instead of, in current state, it's very much state-by-state approach. Is SEC or CFTC going to take the realm? How long will the industry see actually certainty? And that actually have a huge impact on how the banking industry, particularly the tier one banks, their appetite in accepting crypto business and providing on-ramp to crypto platforms, which obviously have a downstream impact on crypto price in general.
What do you think would prompt that turnaround when it comes to institutional investors buying into the crypto story?
You know what? Institutional investors have always been interested in crypto, particularly in the last, I think, a year and a half. That interest has been pretty clear. They may not be talking about it very openly, every one of them, but the reality is, from our side, on the exchange side, we have seen consistent interest from institutional customers. We also have previously done a research with institutional customers, and it shows that actually 70% of all institutional customers in a traditional financial industry actually have a plan to invest in Bitcoin in the coming 3 years. So I would say that interest is always there. It's really whether they are actually talking about it, how much they're talking about it. And as you know, institutional customers are very sophisticated customers, investors, and they don't they tend to be quiet as they build their position. But on the other hand, I do think that the upcoming regulation clarity or anticipated regulation clarity will also draw more institutional interest into this, particularly when it comes to corporate and also potentially national reserve currency. I think that can be a very interesting additional tailwind that the market right now is not pricing in. But as we see more clarity in policy and also in the shakeup of administration, I think we'll see more coming into the market.
The issue has always been legitimacy of cryptocurrencies, and we've seen some of the clarity coming through already with regards to ETFs, for example. I mean, yet the institutional investors did not bite. What is it? What would it take? What exactly would it take for institutional investors to buy into this story?
Institutional investors are buying. Not only the corporate, some of the companies are buying using their treasury money, but all the major institutional customers are actually building their position, including BlackRock. So what we're actually seeing across the board, regardless of which jurisdiction they came from, is that they're actually looking into the Bitcoin, either buying directly or buying through Bitcoin ETF. But I think we will probably see more of such news coming into the market in 2025.
The question really, Hong, is whether or not you can hold Bitcoin for the long term. We've seen this rally before. I mean, yes, it's surging past 81,000 for the first time ever, but we've seen a massive rally followed by a massive drop. Why is this time different? Why should it be different? I mean, we know that Trump is
It's
also
not going to be
quite
different. It's not going to be
it's not.
different. Volatility is always going to be there, but if you zoom out, in addition to volatility, you also see upward trend very steadily in a 4-year cycle. And I personally believe, and I think a lot of the long-term holders believe, that volatility is the price that you have to pay. You have to be able to understand and actually endure volatility over a long period of time to be able to actually really win in this asset. And if you really zoom out, say, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, Bitcoin outperforms every other asset class in the market. Every other asset class in the market. So it's not going to be different this time. It's still going to be volatile. So everyone who is actually looking at the market and thinking whether they want to jump in, if they are a new investor or existing investor, adding to their position, they need to be thinking about volatility. They need to be careful and leave the room for error. But this is an asset for long-term holding. That's not going to change.
Bitcoin strategic reserve, that's an idea that, Trump has thrown out there. How realistic is that? What's the possibility of that actually happening?
I think there is a good chance. There's a good chance. There are actually quite a few pro-Bitcoin senators and congressmen that are winning their seats. And one of them, Senator Loomis, has been very vocal about pro-Bitcoin and about establishing Bitcoin reserve at the federal level. And as a matter of fact, if you look at United States, at several states already, at the state level, that Bitcoin has already become a reserve currency at the state level. So the next question is, when can it become a national reserve currency? I think that conversation is ongoing, and there's a chance that we're seeing more of that coming in 2024.
And what ripple effects might that have for the rest of the world?
Well, there have been a few countries, obviously smaller ones, who have been taking Bitcoin as part of their reserve currency strategy. And I think if the biggest country in the world is using Bitcoin as part of a reserve currency strategy, that will basically start a domino effect globally, which can have very interesting implication on Bitcoin price.
Also, in terms of regulation that is expected in the U.S., would that prompt maybe more countries to be more amenable to cryptocurrencies, you think?
Well, from our perspective, over the last 3 years, we have been engaging with many regulators in different jurisdictions, and a lot of the jurisdictions are showing very positive point of view toward Bitcoin and toward crypto. U.S. has been one of the jurisdictions that has been having a lot more uncertainty, if you will, compared to other jurisdictions. And as we are seeing, things are clearing out, hopefully in 2025. And I also think that will, as to your point, will have a ripple effect, hopefully positive ripple effect in other jurisdictions, and helping us to see more and more clarity from a regulation perspective, which we absolutely embrace as part of the industry.
But the issue for the industry is the convergence of the regulations. We know that crypto players have complained about how they've had to navigate different regulations. When might we see that convergence? And might the U.S. now play a bigger role in dictating that, simply because under Trump, it wants to be the Bitcoin or crypto hub of the world?
Yeah, my personal point of view is that I think there are major issues such as consumer protection, such as segregating customer assets from corporate assets. Some of those key such as AML policy, for example, there will be fundamental similarities among different jurisdictions because the fundamental principles are the same. However, different jurisdictions do have their own subtlety when it comes to their own economic system, their own financial system, their own culture. So I think that different jurisdictions will continue to have their own specific differences, just like what we have been seeing in traditional financial sector, right? When it comes to banking requirements, trust, payment, the regulations in US, in Europe, in Asia, in different parts of Asia, are all different. There are differences. So I think there will still be regional differences. However, I think a common theme is that there will be more and more clarity when it comes to regulation. There will be a clear legitimacy, regulatory legitimacy around the regulation, around this industry, which is a huge positive to both capital as well as talent flow.
Hong, can we talk about legitimacy when there is a conflict of interest? This is a president who loves and is invested in cryptocurrencies. Can we talk about legitimacy in regulation?
Regulation is not going to be driven by the president himself, right? Whether, whichever president, it's really the tone that it's set on from the top. And legislation, at least in the US, president is not the legislative body, but it does set the tone, and the administration that he picks will set the tone from the top. But I think any legislation that we are going to expect in the market has to pass, the legislative body in US, which I think there is actually already a lot of momentum that is going in the right direction in the United States.
Hong, let's talk about projections for the various coins. Earlier, you talked about how you see Bitcoin getting to 100,000 next year. How about the other coins like Ethereum, like Dogecoin? We know that Elon Musk has weighed in. He talked about how he sees Dogecoin at $10. I mean, what are some of your other projections?
I am, as you can see, I'm not really good at predictions. I predicted that for Bitcoin price 4 years ago, and I have to wait for 4 years for it to come true. The other thing is that I think from a historical perspective, if we really try to tell from past experience, generally speaking, for every cycle, Bitcoin goes first, and then you see altcoins, and then there's generally a kind of cascading effect because of how capital flows. And I think that probably going to still hold true for this cycle. Ultimately, I think it really comes down to everyone doing their own research, and they have to pick their own comfort zone for price. A key advice, if I can, to provide to anyone watching this is be really careful and only put in what you can offer to lose. That holds for every investment that you hold. It's really about the error of margin. Do your research, but also having an error of margin. So there is a level of safety, and you do that responsibly. So that would be the biggest piece of advice I would give in this scenario.
People talk about how it is a sweet spot for cryptocurrencies right now. We have the Fed cutting rates. We have China slowing down. We have Trump in place. He is supportive of cryptocurrencies. But what do you deem as the biggest risk for this asset class?
I think in general, it's always going to be a volatile asset class. So I think people should always bear that in mind. Secondly, it is going to continue to be affected by macroeconomics, macro data. We all say that you buy the news and sell the reality. I think between now and the time when the new administration, Trump administration, is sworn in, I think there's still some room to grow. After the new administration comes in, it really depends on what specific policies will be made, both within crypto industry as well as outside crypto industry. I think that will also have a huge impact on where the price would go. And then ultimately, I think it's really about within the industry, like what are the innovations, new applications that will come along that actually have a real impact on people's life and that actually has real use cases. So I think those would actually form the foundation for price momentum, both in the short and long term.